The Vendread is a ritual-focused archetype consisting purely of dark zombie-type monsters that debuted in the 2017 booster pack Code of the Duelist. The deck relies on summoning the more powerful ritual monsters, preferably by using the effect monsters whilst they are on the field in order to grant them unique abilities dependent on the monster used. Their name of Vendread is censored from the original Japanese, as over there they have the much more sinister name of Vendread. This name is a combination of the words dead and vendetta, with vendetta being defined as a blood feud in which the family of a murdered person seeks vengeance on the murderer. It's pretty dark stuff, and fittingly so, as the more you look into several of these card artworks, the more a dark story is unravelled. For you see, the Vendreads appear to have once been humans that had fallen victim to some sort of corruption or virus. It had taken over their minds, making them violent, and increased their strength exponentially. In fact, how about we just call a spade here? They're zombies. The zombies that they most seem to be akin to as well seem to be those related to the Resident Evil series as well. But we'll get more into that later. So knowing that the majority of the monsters are mindless zombies, it's interesting because one of the monsters in the archetype is not like the others, and that is Vendread Slayer. Slayer instead stands against the waves of evil, defying everything that the others represent. By looking at the artworks he appears in, we can unveil more about his tragic past and the vendetta that he has vowed to exact. Also, keep in mind, it's alleged that all of this is taking place possibly in the city of Skyscraper, basically from the Elemental Heroes kind of place, which, if that is true, that is really cool. It's basically the Elemental Hero place that they protect, but it's been overrun by zombies. That's kind of awesome. But yeah, regardless, now that we know a little bit more about the archetype, let's take a look at each of the cards, starting with the weakest in terms of stats. Vendread Core. Its effect is, if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish one other zombie monster from your graveyard, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. A Vendread monster ritual summoned using this card on the field gains the following effect. You can only use each of the preceding effects of Vendread Core once per turn. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. Basically, all of the effect monsters in the Vendread series have the ability that if they are used for a ritual summon whilst they're on the field, they grant their ritual monster their effect, so we'll just refer to that as the ritual tribute effect. However, this monster's name suggests that this monster could in fact be the cause of the Vendread virus, which we're hereafter going to refer to as the V-Virus, because why not? It's Resident Evil themed. Let's call it the V-Virus. Why not? Evidence to support this comes from the fact that Vendread Core has a bright blue colour scheme, along with a circular central design. These aspects actually reoccur in a variety of other of the Vendread cards, such as in the eyes of the monsters, here, here, and here, and as well in the centre of some of the other monsters, such as here and here. So it almost seems as if Vendread Core burrows itself into a host, which it then corrupts and then transforms into one of these zombies. Knowing this then, if I had to make a parallel to the Resident Evil series, it seems most akin to the Los Plagas parasites, that once they infect someone, they change their genetic makeup and mind. Vendread Anima. Its effect is you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one of your banished Vendread monsters except Vendread Anima, special summon it. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn except zombie monsters. Its unique ability it grants to a ritual monster is it can banish any monster destroyed by battle with this card. Now, Vendread Anima's design and name are interesting, as her artwork appears to depict several copies of herself floating in some kind of void of horror. Each one of the copies appear to be different in terms of their mutations as well. Some actually look more human than others, but some seem to be missing sections of their own bodies, which make them look unstable. We see one here that is almost identical to that of a human, while we have another one here that has two sets of wings, as opposed to the main one, which only has one. It's worth having a quick glance at a name as well, because it's an unusual name. Where does it come from? Well, it's one letter change off of the word anime, and honestly, it does look like a very anime looking design. However, looking into the word anima, we can see that it could be referring to the psychology term, which refers to the feminine part of a man's personality, which could reflect this monster's female design. But then again, it could also refer to a different term in psychology, which refers to the inner self of a person's personality, which is separate from one's external persona that they project. Basically, it's like the real you, I guess. I got a U in psychology. I didn't do too well in it. Now, the V virus does appear to be quite a powerful thing, as it seems to not only affect humans, but it also seems to mutate a multitude of different creatures too. For example, Vendread Striges. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can reveal one Vendread card in your hand, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. This monster's unique ability it grants its ritual monster is that after damage calculation, if this card battled an opponent's monster, you can draw one card and then discard one card. This monster's artwork shows a variety of differently mutated birds, all of which, I might add, look really disturbing. That bird has like 5 beaks on its body, that one has 3 feet, and oh god, look at that one. It's got like 1 billion heads. Now this monster's name of Striges is based on an old mythological term. It is known as Striges in some stories and Strix as others, but basically it refers to a bird of ill omen. Not to be confused with the cat of ill omen, however, they could be related. And it's definitely not related to an owl of luck, though that does seem to be the polar opposite of this monster. But regardless, the bird of ill omen is said to be a product of metamorphosis that fed on human flesh and blood, which does sound a lot like a zombie, and the fact that a lot of the Vendread monsters seem to be combinations of creatures coming together. This all sounds very familiar. Vendread Hound Horde. Its effect is, if this card is in your graveyard, you can discard one Vendread card, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. Its unique ability it grants to a ritual monster is that once per turn, quick effect, you can target one spell or trap your opponent controls, banish it. We alluded to this a little bit earlier about this archetype, but basically this monster is another reference to the Resident Evil franchise. And that is because Hound Horde's artwork looks almost identical to that of the zombie dogs that appear in numerous Resident Evil games and films. Most specifically, the biggest giveaway is that split jaw, very iconic in the Resident Evil series. Vendread Revenants. Its effect is, if this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, by battle or card effect, and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. Its unique ability it grants a ritual monster is once per turn. Quick effect, you can target one special summon monster your opponent controls, banish it. This card's artwork shows the monsters as the classic zombie, albeit each of the zombies do appear to have their own unique mutations, which could also explain why each of the individual Vendread monsters have their own unique abilities as well. Depending on who they were before they got corrupted depends on what they turn out after they are. We can see a horde of these monsters in the artwork of Vendread Knights, which is a further reference to how zombies tend to become hordes. In terms of the monster's name, Revenant refers to a person who has returned supposedly from the dead. And interestingly, there is an actual Resident Evil enemy called a Revenant that appears in Resident Evil Revelation 2. So now that we've seen all the effect monsters, let's move on to the ritual monsters. Starting with the man between life and death that seeks revenge, Vendread Slayer. His effect is you can ritual summon this card with any Vendread ritual spell. Once per turn, if this card battles an opponent's monster during damage calculation, quick effect, you can banish one zombie monster from your graveyard, this card gains 300 attack. If this ritual summon card is sent to the graveyard, you can add one ritual spell from your deck to your hand, and if you do, send one Vendread monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can only use the effect of Vendread Slayer once per turn. You'll notice that out of all the Vendreads we've seen so far, this is the only one with the unique archetypal name change of Revendread. Now this monster's name looks as if it's a mashup of revenge and dread. But to whom is Slayer seeking revenge on? Well, Vendread Slayer actually started life as a man with a loving wife. At some point, his wife either succumbed to the V virus or died as a result of it. Most likely, it was at the hands of Vendread Battle Lord. After this, he kept her locket as a reminder of what had happened on that fateful day. As the virus began to spread throughout his body, the man vowed from the bottom of his soul that he would seek vengeance on all the Vendreads for what they did to his wife. And through his sheer willpower and resolve, the man was able to stave off the corruption from taking over his mind. Though his body was still changed into something unnatural, unlike the others, his eyes now glowed red with fury, instead of the typical blue of the other Vendreads. Now, with his newfound strength and resolve, he would seek to battle all those he deemed as evil. However, there was one that he sought to fight more than the others, and that was Vendread Battle Lord, who is known in the Japanese as, believe it or not, Vendread Bastard. You can see why this one had his name censored. His effect is you can ritual summon this card with any Vendread ritual spell. You can banish one Vendread card from your graveyard and declare one card type, monster, spell, or trap. For the rest of this turn, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects of that type. If this ritual summon card is sent to the graveyard, you can add one ritual monster from your deck to your hand, and if you do, send one Vendread monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can only use the effect of Vendread Battle Lord once per turn. Battle Lord and Slayer are shown on several occasions fighting throughout different artworks. It seems as if the ability of the Vendreads to inherit the power of another by using them as part of their summon also applies in their actual card lore as well, as it appears as if Vendread Battle Lord's goal is to defeat Slayer in order to absorb him into his own being in order to gain Slayer's powers. However, in a twist of fate, it is in fact Slayer who walks away victorious after their battle. He is the one to absorb the powers of Battle Lord into his own. It is through this action that Slayer was able to evolve into his superior form, with that form known as Vendread Executor. Its effect is you can ritual summon this card with any Vendread ritual spell. This card's name becomes Vendread Slayer while on the field. While this ritual summon card is on the field, your opponent cannot target cards you control with card effects, except this card. If this ritual summon card is destroyed by battle or is destroyed by opponent's card effect while in its monster zone, you can add one Vendread card from your deck to your hand. You can only use the effect of Vendread Executor once per turn. You can see references to both monsters, Slayer and Battle Lord, in this card's design. However, we know that it is Slayer who is in control, as he still has his scarf and piercing red eyes. As well, in this monster's effect, it states that it's still treated as Vendread Slayer while it is on the field. Interestingly, Slayer's story and design do seem to be most akin to the comic book character of Spawn, who too was a tortured hero who wielded both the powers of good and evil. Vendread Chimera. You can ritual summon this card with any Vendread ritual spell. When a card or effect is activated that would destroy a card on the field, quick effect, you can banish one zombie monster from your graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. This card is tributed or banished for a ritual summon. All monsters your opponent controls lose 500 attack and defense. You can only use each effect of Vendread Chimera once per turn. The last of the ritual Vendreads, this monster is an amalgamation of several different types of infected creatures, which all seem to be pulled together to create a single organism. In fact, even its name of Chimera is from Greek mythology, referencing a creature of which had a lion's head, a goat's body, and a serpent's tail. Finally, we have one link monster that's a part of the archetype, a Vendread Savior. Requires 2 zombie monsters. This card's name becomes Vendread Slayer while on the field. You can only use each of the following effects of a Vendread Savior once per turn. You can target one Vendread card in your graveyard, add it to your hand. During damage calculation, if this card battles an opponent's monster, quick effect, you can send one zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard. That opponent's monster loses attack equal to the level of the monster sent to the graveyard times 200 until the end of this turn. This monster also appears to be an upgraded version of Slayer, but where he sits in the timeline, ain't got a clue. What I do know is that he appears as a cover card on Extra Pack 2018. Vendread Evolution, known in the Japanese Vendread Reverse. Discard one card, then target one Vendread monster and one ritual spell in your graveyard. Special summon that monster in defense position, and if you do, add that ritual spell to your hand. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 5 of your banished zombie monsters, shuffle them into the deck, then draw one card. You can only use each effect of Vendread Revolution once per turn. Vendread Origin, known in the Japanese as Vendread Born. This card can be used to ritual summon any Vendread ritual monster from your hand or graveyard. You must also tribute monsters from your hand or field and or banish zombie monsters from your graveyard whose total levels equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster you ritual summon. If Vendread Slayers you control will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. Vendread Charge. Send one zombie monster from your hand or face up from your field to the graveyard. Special summon one Vendread monster from your deck. You can only activate one Vendread Charge per turn. Vendread Nightmare. Once per turn, you contribute one or more Vendread monsters from your hand and or field, then target one face-up monster you control. Increase its level by the number of monsters tributed until the end of this turn. When you're attacking, Vendread Ritual monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle. You can have your monster gain 1000 attack. You can only use the effect of Vendread Nightmare once per turn. Vendread Knights. You can discard one card, add one Vendread monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Vendread Knights once per turn. When your Vendread monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can banish one Vendread monster from your graveyard. It can attack an opponent's monster again in a row. Vendread Reorigin, known in the Japanese as Vendread Reborn. Target one face-up monster your opponent controls that has a level, tribute it, and if you do, special summon one Vendread token. Zombie Dark, attack 0, defense 0, with a level equal to the tributed monster's original level. While the token special summoned by this effect is on the field, you cannot normal or special summon monsters except Vendreads. Vendread Reunion. Reveal one Vendread Ritual monster in your hand, special summon any number of banished Vendread monsters with different names in face down defense position whose total levels equal exactly the level of the revealed Ritual monster. Tribute all those face down defense position monsters, then Ritual summon that Ritual monster from your hand. You must be able to Ritual summon to activate and to resolve this effect. Vendread Revolution. Discard one card, then target one Vendread monster and one ritual spell in your graveyard, special summon that monster in defense position. And if you do, add that ritual spell card to your hand. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 5 of your banished zombie monsters, shuffle them into the deck, then draw one card. You can only use each effect of Vendread Revolution once per turn. Vendread Daybreak. If your opponent controls more cards than you do, choose one ritual summon Vendread monster you control and destroy all cards on the field except the chosen monster. It cannot attack directly while it remains face up on the field, and you can only activate one Vendread Daybreak per turn. And with that, guys, that's another episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Archetype Trivia done. But guys, thank you all for watching. It's time to give a massive shout out to everybody that is supporting the channel. Shout out to my platinum backers, yugioh97, Chowderman36, J24092, and Spencer Davis. Guys, thank you very much for supporting the channel. As well to my gold supporters, Stefan Pole, J Malo, Silver Defender, David Shanahan, Shogun, and Chungming Zed. Also, thank you to my YouTube backers, Shinjo CB, You and James Forge. Guys, thank you very much. And thank you very much to everybody else that is supporting the channel. You guys are really appreciated, so thank you very much.